There's a big flock of pink and greys on the perimeter camera. Reminds me of the one I had as a kid. Welcome to this devlog for Dryandra, an interactive fiction game I made as a part of my studies at SAE Perth. In this video, I'll overview the entire production process for the game, from conceptualization through to the final build. Our goal for this project was to create a meaningful game design that expresses a key concept, theme, or emotion as a stated design intent. So first I found some scholarly sources to reference and documented them alongside my initial concept. I was interested in creating a conservationally themed game, so as a part of my research I went and visited Perth Zoo, taking plenty of reference photos of the information provided at the exhibits. I also arranged a meeting with some of the staff as a means of gathering information to help inform my design. After establishing an informational foundation for the concept, I began to prototype my playable alpha. The prototype served as a simple demonstration of the camera system I intended to use in the game. After quickly building a prototype, I started to generate all the pre-production documentation, brainstorming the narrative progression for the game, fleshing out the design more in a game design document, and generating a production schedule, after which my attention returned to the game's development. On the Unity Asset Store, I found this pack of photo-scanned Australian foliage, which I purchased and immediately put to use in constructing the game's environments. The pack not only included art, but also included some audio and post-processing. With the environment setup, I started prototyping the interactable triggers that would start conversations, followed by the core functionality for the dialogue system. I wanted to create an adaptive dialogue system, where characters dynamically decide how to respond at very specific points in the dialogue, based on the player's history of selected dialogue responses. I opted to use scriptable objects as the basis for my dialogue system, which made creating and implementing conversations fairly simple. Then I recorded some placeholder audio for my placeholder dialogue lines, just to make sure the system was functioning as expected. Though at this stage, decision dialogue nodes were not yet functional. With the core functionality implemented and user tests looming, I decided it was time to start writing a script for the dialogue. I then began to integrate it into the game and implemented the day management system that handles the overall progression for the game. This included being able to trigger conversations at the start of a day before any other conversations have happened, and at the end of the day once all conversations have been finished. I also quickly implemented a main menu. At this point, my trusty artist Jeremy had finished the first iteration of the Western Swamp tortoise model, and although it wasn't textured, it was animated. So I quickly whipped up some simple AI for it to allow me to program dynamic behaviors across different days. Then I gave it a conversation trigger so it could be associated with dialogue. At this point, it was about the time for user testing, so I whipped up a feedback form with Google Forms and integrated that with the game's main menu, before uploading the demo to itch.io and putting the call out for user testers. Unfortunately, I didn't have any time to find voice actors prior to conducting user testing. Instead, I personally did the voice acting for both roles, recording all the dialogue in Audacity, and pitch shifting Dr. Walker's lines to create some kind of distinction between the two characters.
Managed to get a good night's sleep.
The testers completed the feedback form after playing the demo, providing me with a range of feedback to analyze and identify improvements from. Shortly after the user testing, Jeremy sent me through the final textures for the tortoise model. I also found this dynamic cloud asset for free on the Unity Asset Store to liven up my procedural skyboxes. Then I created the rest of the scenes corresponding with the included days in the game. At this stage, the tortoise was the only animal, so to bring the scenes to life a bit more, I created some AI using a Galar asset that I purchased off the Unity Asset Store. Jeremy also came through with the next set of models for the research station interior and the camera feed monitor. I also purchased this radio asset from the Unity Asset Store. Then I created this smoke particle effect for day 5 using a free texture from textures.com, and I also began to review the lighting of each scene. On day 5 here, I used the default Unity fog to make the environment feel smoky, started playing around with the post-processing settings, and also began implementing improvements based on my analysis of the user feedback. I also modified the dialogue system so that game events could be triggered in correspondence with specific dialogue nodes. I also made sure the environment cameras in the radio had high pass filters. At this stage, my repository was exceeding 2 GB in size and most of the dialogue was still to be recorded. In response, I divided my repository into 3 separate silos, one for art, one for audio, and one for the other project files. At this point, I was nearing the end of the production cycle and the research station still looked fairly empty, so I went on the Unity Asset Store and found a bunch of free assets to decorate the room. I also purchased this fox asset and implemented it with some AI, using the existing tortoise behaviors as a foundation. In the last few weeks of production, I brought someone on board to revise the narrative and dialogue. Once they had nearly finished revising the dialogue for the entire game, I then reiterated on their revisions, rewriting all the dialogue to be my original work. And with the dialogue rewritten, all that was left to do is record and implement the voice acting, and after helping me with the narrative revisions, I gave Louise the role of Dr. Walker, and I had my mate Shane down the road play the role of the DFES worker. Following this, I made some simple final touches to the game, including adding the controls to the pause menu, as well as some toggles for the post-processing effects. I sourced some music to synchronize with the key moments in the narrative, and I implemented the title and logo in the main menu. And that's it. That's how Dryandra was produced. Thanks for watching.
Time has passed already. It feels like yesterday I arrived. I remember it was a day very similar.